Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God Almighty, most merciful and most beneficent. In every religion, emphasis has been laid in helping and supporting human beings. In other words, our duties to ourselves and our duties to others are placed side by side as equal important obligation in life. This is what the Council of Bolton is doing. So let us pray that God Almighty give ability, strength, and courage to Madam Mayor and her team and all the councillors and to all those who are working for the betterment of people of Bolton. And God Almighty safeguard all of us from all calamities. Amen.
Please be seated.
There we go. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the chamber and gather outside W.H. Smith's. In case you hadn't noticed, I am wearing pink tonight, like a number of councillors who are in the council chamber. This is because today is to wear pink for breast cancer awareness, and we will be collecting donations, and I hope you can give generously. I want to thank everyone who has made the effort and wore pink tonight. Members will have seen the sad news about the death of former owner of Bolton Wanderers, Eddie Davis. Mr. Davis was a great benefactor to the museum and helped with the cost of its refurbishment. Members will also be aware of the sad news of the death of former councillor and honorary alderman Alan Rushton, whose funeral will take place on Friday. Please stand and join with me in a minute's silence to remember them. Thank you very much. Thank you. Members may also be aware that Honorary Alderman Barbara Ronson is not so well, and I'm sure you'll join with me in sending her our best wishes. There are a number of awards which I would like to tell you about so that we can celebrate these together. First of all, it's Sport on the Square. We have representatives from the team that delivered Sport on the Square during the summer this year. I'd like the representatives from the Directorate of People to come forward, please. okay, okay, all right, okay. You're all right there, Robbie.
He's bigger than you.
Do you want shaking hands or? Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
Again. And again. Couple more, please. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thank you for bringing together such an interesting range of activities for the young people of Bolton to try. Can we show our appreciation with a round of applause? I think you've already done that, but thank you very much. The next group is this youth service. We have youth services with us following the Ofsted inspection, which found the service to be good. Please would you come forward? Thank you. Well, normally it would have been on live stream, but we're not on live stream, you see. This is the trouble. Okay, right. Okay.
We're scrapping that bit, right? You don't have to see that. We go straight to food.
Where are we? Right, the next group is the food and drink from the Food and Drink Festival. We have representatives from that team who delivered the wonderful Food and Drink Festival. And would you like to come forward? So that's off as well.
You use that one.
Congratulations. What a good job. Right, can you just have your hand? Okay, so it looks like it's a reason. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Did a good job. Right. Next, we have this Recycling Awards. We have representatives from the recycling team who won the APSE Awards for recycling. Please, would you come forward? Do you want them? Are you okay? Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Keep a smile now. And again, please, if you don't mind. Okay. One more. Thank you. Egyptology. Oh. All right. Okay. Egyptology. We have representatives from the collections team for the Library and Museum Service with us, who managed the refurbishment of the museum and coordinated the Egyptology exhibition
would you please come forward? Thank you. Come on, Alan.
Should we come in the middle here, please, if you don't mind? It's fine, okay? Just there, please. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Show to the camera, yes? Again. Last one.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider conferring the title of Honorary Alderman on Dr. Colin Shaw.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members, Colin and Dee. When I was first elected in 2004, yes, it is that long ago, Colin was my go-to contact for advice on anything to do with the council or casework, and I'm indebted to him, and always will be, for making my early years as a councillor as easy as possible, and for the fantastic relationship that we've had ever since then. So I'll start with a thank you. Thank you, Colin, for your support. Bolton born and bred and educated at Farnworth Grammar School, Colin worked at the family firm of builders merchants in Moses Gate, established by his grandfather many years earlier, who took advantage of the new railway, which stopped at Moses Gate, more than it perhaps does now. Colin managed 40 years in that job. Colin's never been one for short-termism. 40 years. And then they let him free. And having retired, he established a rather nice wedding hire business, which combined his love of classic cars with his love of driving. Ever conscious of looking after the pennies, Colin managed to combine his classic cars with his work and made a profit out of it. Generations of the Shaw family have lived in Bolton, and that means Colin is widely known, and he can quote you the history of many of the town's famous and infamous people. If you live in Bolton, Colin probably knows your secrets, so be warned. Before becoming a councillor, Colin was an active member of the Territorial Army, and he was also a special constable. These interests, I'm sure, led him to his lifelong commitment to the armed forces, and in particular to the annual remembrance concert and parade, which I know he cherished. Not content with just a couple of extracurricular activities, Colin also embarks on a thespian career. He is proud to have held an equity card and appeared in many TV programmes as a walk-on extra. During his 24 years as a councillor for Deancombe, Heaton and later for Heaton and Lostock, Colin has been chair of many committees. Chair of adult scrutiny, chair of corporate scrutiny, chair of licensing, and a member of several charities, including the Social Centre for the Blind, which I know he hated having to leave. In 2005, Colin combined his love of cars and adventure by embarking on an arduous 4,000-mile drive across the Sahara Desert in Africa in aid of charity. This was no ordinary rally because the team were required to buy their cars for just £100 and then drive them across the Sahara and then sell them at a profit and donate the proceeds to charity, which in this case was the Mayor's charity. He took part in a team of 6, I think it was, and he was partnered by his son Rupert on this adventure. Whilst the other two cars in the team were a rather mundane and elderly Peugeot 405 and some ex-army Jeep that was on its last legs, nothing like that was good enough for Colin. Colin's car was a very elderly Mercedes 450. That's the big luxury car. Comfort is one of Colin's strong points. They did finish after many breakdowns and raised a significant sum for charity. In 2013 and 14, Colin was Mayor of Bolton, ably accompanied by Dee, and he thoroughly enjoyed it, especially meeting new people and old friends. At his inauguration speech, Colin said, "You will not find a more enthusiastic ambassador." And that really sums up not just Colin's year as Mayor, but his tenure as a councillor as well, because there's nobody more enthusiastic. One last achievement in Colin's council career was when he was awarded his honorary doctorship of humanities for services to the community by the University of Bolton. And Colin, I know, is immensely and rightly proud of that accolade, which recognises his many years of service. Many men are called gentlemen, but with his high moral standards, remember he doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, never heard him swear. He may have some other vices that he's not told me about. But Colin is the real deal. Colin is a genuine gentleman. And I'm proud to call Colin and Dee my friends, and I will be forever grateful for their support. So, Madam Mayor, I move the motion that Colin Shaw be given the title of Honorary Alderman of the Borough of Bolton. Thank you.
Councillor Morris. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Honorary Alderman Colin Shaw, will you please receive this scroll from the Council in recognition of your past service to this authority? Oh, sorry. Yeah, can we just switch it off?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, distinguished guests. I mean, what more can one say? I'm overcome. Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Cliff. Madam Mayor, you no doubt heard the phrase, a week is a long time in politics. Well, how about 3,300 weeks? And that's the period I've been in politics. Now, I'll just ask our mathematicians here, how many years is that?
I think it's
Our gentleman there? It's 63 years. I was chairman of a group of young Conservatives in Bolton in 1955. So that's 63 years ago. So I think it's about time I was put out to grass. So I'd like to thank all sides for all the help they've given us during the 24 years that I've been on the council. Everyone's been so helpful. And you probably won't remember me, but I'll remember you all. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider conferring the title of Honorary Alderman on Mr. Alan Wilkinson.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors, distinguished guests. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of our group to propose this motion and on behalf of Norman and myself and the wider Bromley Cross team. This is all about service we give this award to and length of service. And certainly, while length is not everything, Madam Mayor, we can definitely say that Councillor Wilkinson, or Mr. Alan Wilkinson, who is known now, at 37 years service as a councillor, the longest serving, continuous serving councillor that this borough has ever seen, really deserves this, perhaps more than any of us put together. I want to talk a lot more about Alan the person. I've known him for many years. In fact, when he stood in that by-election in 1980, all those years ago, and was successful, it was indeed my first election, believe it or not, as a 12-year-old, brought home from school and dumped on a polling station, as was taking numbers at Walmsley. So I feel I've started my political career, almost even though Alan was connected, even before then, at the same time. It's been a privilege working with him and Denise over the years, and they are a team. There's no question about that. They say behind every great man is an even greater woman. I wouldn't go so far as to say a greater woman, but I wouldn't say that to her face either, because she certainly is a great woman indeed. But together, they have been a force of nature in Bromley Cross. I think it's without question Alan was the most popular councillor in Bromley Cross. Denise had been born and brought up there. Alan, although Denise very often refers to Alan as very gypsified, he can lay his roots anywhere and wander around. Although not originally from Bromley Cross, he embraced Bromley Cross when he arrived and married the love of his life, Denise, and made his roots there. They have been incredibly supportive. I could list the number of committees he's been on. But Alan is not one of those councillors that seeks the limelight. There are many of us in this room who like the limelight. But Alan got on with his work behind the scenes, getting on with his casework, meeting the people of Bromley Cross, talking to them and generally trying to make a better life for them. And we've worked on many, many community projects together. We've done barbecues, we've planted troughs, we've been up lampposts, putting things on. We've done all sorts together. And Alan often does those jobs that get on gradually and make the things happen. He's one of those councillors that is a real grafter behind the scenes. And I want to thank him for that and all the years. Alan and Denise, if you told them to cook 12 salmon in the morning for a do in the evening, they'd have them done. His trifles, as we all know, are legendary. And as are his rum truffles. And he could make, if you told Alan to make 24 scones by lunchtime, he'd have done them. He has hidden talents, and he will be so proud and honoured by this tonight, I know, because he is all about place. He loves Bolton, he loves his area, he has a massive collection of memorabilia to do with the town, a massive collection of crested china to do with the town, anything Bolton related, postal history, you name it, he does it. And he is a man of many hidden talents, and therefore I have great pleasure, Madam Mayor. And on one personal note, I want to thank them publicly for when they were mayor and mayoress. I was not known to this chamber then in 2000 when Alan and Denise were mayor and mayoress. But of course, many in this room will know my history and my health. And I want to thank them for highlighting kidney transplantation and organ donation as they did in that year, and signing up the hundreds and thousands of people of this town and making them aware of that. I'll be forever grateful to you both for doing that, for me and for highlighting that terrible disease and having my consultant as your guest at Mayor Making. It meant an awful lot to me. I've thanked you before, but I would like to thank you publicly again for doing that. So I have great pleasure in proposing this motion tonight, Madam Mayor, that Mr. Alan Wilkinson be conferred with the title of Honorary Alderman of this town. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Madam Mayor, councillors, the danger is, as you say, if you go second, there's very little for you to say, but actually I think there is a little bit I can add to what you said today about Alan. Alan, I believe, was born in Preston. Well, we won't hold that against you, Alan, okay? But you were educated all through your life in Bolton at Red Lane, Crompton Fold, and then at Cannon Slade when it was a grammar school. And Alan has devoted his life to the service of Bolton people. And it really was service, because for a period of time, 21 years, he was actually a trader on Ashburner Street Market, where he served a lot of people in that time in Bolton. And even when he changed his career, it was still in the service of the public as a nurse. And but for a car crash, that would have been his chosen career into his later working life. As has already been said, Alan has had exceptional service as a Bromley Cross councillor from 1981 and as a magistrate as well for the town from 2000. On a personal level, I would like to thank Alan, because I believe that we worked very well together when Alan was opposition on education. And I have to say, he always endeavoured to work in a constructive way for the children of the borough. He always put the children first, and I really appreciated the approach that he did, and it was really, really helpful at the time. And I think he will remember some of the occasions when we had to put our heads together. Difficult times. Alan, in fact, epitomises Bolton first, politics second in that role that he played. So thank you, Alan. And after demonstrating so many years of service to the residents of Bolton through the council and his community activity, Alan was elected to be our mayor in 2000 and 2001, where, as you mentioned, he was ably supported by Denise, his wife, as mayoress. So I think it all is left for me to say that after demonstrating such civic responsibility, I really do wish to second that we bestow the position of Honorary Alderman of the Borough of Bolton on Alan Wilkinson. Congratulations, Alan.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Honorary Alderman Alan Wilkinson, please can you take this on behalf of the borough? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members, I've got to say, first of all, thank you to everyone. I think I've made friends over the years, and I hope I've not made any enemies. If I did, I didn't mean to. I think probably some people may wonder why I shipped out halfway through my 4-year term. I will make... Firstly, I've always said that councillors should be like magistrates and retire gracefully at 70. I know many, well, a few, will disagree with me. But as I'll be 70 on the 6th of November, I thought, well, I've got to stand by my own words. And last year, we had a few medical problems between us, and we just felt it was the right time to go, which we did. And I can only say thank you to all those for all help, and to the officers over the years. And again, thank you very much. I will be saying other things.
Madam Mayor, that concludes the business of the extraordinary meeting of the Council, and we now proceed to the ordinary business.
Declarations of interest. Is there any? No?
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to confirm the minutes of the last meeting of the Council.
Are the minutes approved?
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider a motion in the name of Councillor Mrs Thomas relating to polling districts.
Madam Mayor, councillors, could I move that the proposals relating to the polling districts and places as set out in the report circulated to members be approved?
Councillor Zaman.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I formally second the motion.
All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? The motion is moved. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business regarding the Transport for Greater Manchester Committee has been withdrawn following further information from Greater Manchester. Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to consider a motion in the name of Councillor McEwen relating to changes in committee membership and the appointments to other bodies.
Councillor McKeon, sorry.
I move that Councillor Peel replace Councillor Adia on a single local joint consultative.
Councillor Dean.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I formally second.
Those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Motion is moved. Motion's carried.
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is questions under Standing Order 9 bracket A. There are no questions under... Sorry, my apologies.
Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask the Executive Member for Adult Social Care and Health, the local government have produced a green paper, The Lives We Want to Lead, regarding the future of adult social care. This is because the Tory government have continually refused to acknowledge the huge problem we face, choosing to kick the debate into the long grass and avoiding difficult conversations and decisions. The funding gap in adult social care in this country needs addressing now. It is not a matter that can be shelved until more politically expedient for the government. Can the executive member for the Adult Social Care and Health advise us on the Council's response to this paper?
Councillor Newell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to answer this question, Councillor Gillis. This was a very successful consultation document by the LGA. It's had over 4,500 downloads and elicited 500 responses. And the LGA are launching a further publication to feed into the government's green paper when the government actually get round to delivering it. A full response to the consultation has been provided by the council. It's a very comprehensive document that the Deputy Director of People has produced, and it answers very comprehensively all the questions that were posed in the document. I'll give you a summary of what the council's response has been. Bolton Council welcomes the opportunity for a national debate on the long-term sustainability of adult social care. Whilst we welcome short-term funding to avoid crisis in care at winter, we must urge the government not to delay the need for a long-term solution. Real-time budget reductions against a backdrop of growing population of older residents is leading to scarce resources having to be targeted at our most vulnerable people. Bolton is proud to be part of the Greater Manchester Devolution and fully supports the strategy of reform and ambition to integrate social care and health. Bolton's locality plan sets out as a system, our ambition and vision for creating a clinically and financially sustainable place. We are cautious, however, that to deliver these changes at pace and scale, it is at risk if adult social care is not fully funded and sustainable going forward. Bolton Council has implemented local council taxation increases for the adult social care preset by 5% up to this time. We have 1 year left to implement the other 1% of the 6% that was ring-fenced, if that in fact is the decision that we are going to do that. And this preset was offered as protection to both children and adult social care. Last year, the Tories supported the 2% increase, but rejected our wish to split the 2% to 1% each for adult and social care. So we now have a situation where children's services are propped up by money from the adults' reserves. It's unsustainable as the council moves forward, and we need a national solution to the funding issue. Without such a solution, our plans to improve outcomes and wellbeing for Bolton in an integrated system is at risk. The council response was submitted following a discussion at a cross-party policy development group and engagement across the North West with other execs and directors of adult social services. Our response focuses on the fundamental role of local government to improve the health and well-being in the local area and the importance of person-centred care that is good quality. Bolton believes strongly that a national solution to the funding is required and would not support further local taxation. The commitment to funding adult social care needs to be national funding in the medium term at least, to allow for effective and prudent local financial planning and investment. Means testing in Bolton would not raise sufficient resources, nor would further increases in council tax due to the level of income deprivation in our locality. We would urge any solutions avoiding a postcode lottery. Therefore, we would support further exploration of national taxation options and a fairer distribution of resources to the areas with the greatest need and the poorest health and well-being outcomes. The full response will be made available to leaders of all parties and members of the Policy Development Group. And I'd just like to add, just in case anybody thinks that that response was a little bit partisan, I'd just like to give you a few quotes from Lord Porter of Spalding, who, as we know, was the Tory chair of the LGA when this report was done. And he said, if the government fails to fund local government adequately, there is a real risk to the viability of some of the services and councils. He also said, between 2010 and 2020, councils will have lost 60 pence out of every pound that the government has provided for such services. And finally, this is my favourite. If the Conservative Conference does not address the funding crisis in our local services, it will have been a waste of time. Well, I actually disagree with him there, because as we saw, our Prime Minister threw a few shapes at that conference, and I think that conference gave us a good indication of who the front runner in next year's Strictly Come Dancing will be. Thank you.
Before we go any further, can I just mention that we actually have got 9 motions on tonight. So I would ask that if the question is what could be read out of the order paper, rather than actually speaking to it, it might be one way that we could probably get through some of it. But it's entirely up to you. I am within your hands. Okay. Councillor Pickup.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, ask the question of the Executive Cabinet Member for Environmental Services. There are concerns about drones being flown over children's play areas and playing fields in the borough. Is the Executive Cabinet Member able to advise what measures the Council can take to deal with such issues and delay these fears?
Councillor Peel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Probably the most surprised person to find that the flying of drones came under my portfolio. It's a very wide sweeping portfolio. So, the control of airspace, whether over council-owned land or not, falls under the control of the Civil Aviation Authority and not the council. I am, however, advised that new legislation came into effect in July of 2018 as an update to the Air Navigation Order 2016, which means that the flying of drones is now covered by legislation rather than just guidance. As a result, it is now an offence to fly drones at heights over 120 metres above ground level or within 150 metres of crowds and congested areas, including overflying. A congested area means, in relation to a city, town or settlement, any area which is substantially used for residential, commercial, industrial or recreational purposes. So a school or recreational space where children play would appear to fall into that definition. Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I hope you'll bear with me for 1 minute. I will talk very fast, honestly. But I don't think I could go without saying anything about the exceptional teams that we've seen tonight. And some of us had the privilege at scrutiny, children's scrutiny, with 3 presentations from Statwell Centres, primary and secondary schools on the outcomes and inspections, which I'm quite sure people will hopefully nod when I say they were not just exceptional, they were amazing as well, those results, despite savage government cuts. We should be proud as Punch of our staff, pupils and parents. I thought I'd slip that in before sorry about that. So will the executive member for Children's Services join with me in congratulating, along with all the others I've just said, our children's homes and youth services on their good results from Ofsted.
Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Murray. I'm delighted to join you in congratulating the staff and the young people who have achieved such success in recent Ofsted inspections. We now have all our youth provision rated good or better, and all our children's homes are equally successful in providing good or better care for our looked after children. All children's homes are rated good for the support and care they provide to some of our most vulnerable young people. And I would like to thank the whole team under the leadership of Nicky Litchmore for this fantastic work. In the Youth Sports and Play Service, we have seen a range of excellent reports, with Castle Hill, the most recent service, to be rated good in their recent report. All these services provide sports, activities and clubs which help our young people to develop sporting and social skills. And it is thanks to the dedicated staff who work mornings, evenings and weekends that we now have all our sport and youth provision rated as good or better. While it is always dangerous to single out individuals, I would particularly like to thank Chris McIver and Angela Kane for the work with the teams that they have achieved such great outcomes. As the report on Castle Hill says, good management is in place, staff are good role models, staff are skilled in challenging children according to their abilities. So, I thank my colleague for this question, and I am delighted to celebrate all these excellent reports and the staff that have made them possible. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't read the question out, just ask the Chief Executive if he can give an answer.
Chief Executive Tony Oakman.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. As you may be aware, the procedure is still the same for 9 bracket C questions. So basically, the officers send the question to the relevant body and the elected member is provided with the information when we've received the answer. So we're still waiting for the answer. But also, in addition, Greater Manchester Police have been invited to corporate scrutiny in November, and you will be able to ask your question in a public meeting.
Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that everybody is under pressure, but even at the massively reduced level of activity of area forums, we do need to be able to plan. Therefore, I ask the Executive Cabinet Member, given that the current financial year started on the 1st of April 2018, can he please indicate when area forums will be told what their budget is for this year?
Councillor Peel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Area forum budgets for this financial year have been communicated to members through the member-only meetings in each area forum. The only exception to this is the funding allocation to forums relating to highway maintenance, which is yet to be decided by Cabinet.
Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The refurbished Albert Halls was handed back to the Council in January 2017, 21 months ago. The official opening was, I believe, in March 2017, yet we still have no catering contract in place. That has cost the Council money. A report to the Executive Member this week showed that in Q1 of 2018 to 19, it had cost £117,000. Then we have to add the effects for the final quarter of 2016-17 and the whole of 2017-18. So I would therefore like to ask the question on the order paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Peel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I answer this question, I did notice some shaking of heads at that last question, so I will double-check the information I've been given and ensure that members are emailed. Okay? This particular question. Negotiations to award the contract to provide catering services and open a restaurant in the Albert Halls are ongoing and should be completed in time for the contract to be in place in early 2019. The tender exercise began after the council was informed that it would be financially and operationally better to have a single catering provider in the Albert Halls. Members are already aware that whilst this process was ongoing, the Albert Hall's budget had been carefully managed to minimise the impact. Members are also aware that any impact of this delay will be managed within the overall revenue budgets within the Directorate of Place and have no impact on other council services. Finally, Madam Mayor, I'm sure that when the opening does take place next year, Councillor Hayes will be delighted to come along and give his full support to what will be an excellent town centre facility for the people of this borough and wider afield. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last one, members will probably be glad to hear. At every meeting of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, there is a monitoring report on the latest understanding of the effects of Brexit on the Greater Manchester area. However, as it is written by experts, I can understand that some members would not really want to take much notice of it. In June, it was reported that the government had carried out a very relevant study on the expected impact of Brexit on the North West, but was refusing to release it. I understand that the government is being requested to release it and to aid forward planning in the region. I therefore ask the question on the order paper.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors. It's correct that we do receive a Brexit monitoring report and updates which are provided to Greater Manchester chief execs and leaders. But the government report that you refer to, despite being requested by the Mayor, Andy Burnham, directly to the government, has never been shared with Greater Manchester, which we find not a very good situation for the north of England to be in.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've already shown our appreciation to the team once this evening on the team that worked in museums and Egyptology, but will the Executive Cabinet member join me and the rest of my group in heaping praise on the team from the museum, on officers past and present who have worked on and planned for the creation of Bolton's Egypt. It is an absolute credit to all concerned. Numbers already indicate it will be an incredible draw for the town, which is incredibly welcome by us all, attracting many thousands of new visitors. In fact, as reports said in the paper, up to 10,000 the following weekend. We all hope these visitors will stay and sample more of our town and what it has to offer. But inevitably, some of these visitors will be short-stay visitors, and some will arrive on coaches and probably leave just as quickly. We hope that will be few of them and hope that many will stay for longer. But in the recent National Tourism Survey, it was reported that such short-stay visitors are most likely to do two things: go to the toilet and have a cup of tea or coffee. So while I welcome the addition and creation of a much finer shop, which will clearly bring in some great revenue within the museum, and while I appreciate space is at a premium, was it ever considered within the refurbishment to establish a tea room? Seen in many famous museums, most active part of many museums and tourist and National Trust attractions and similar like, where visitors could relax, but more importantly, leave a little bit more of their money behind in Bolton after their short visit. Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Byrne.
Which was the short visit, David? Was it to the toilet? No, we have refurbished. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did refurbish the toilets. There's splendid new toilets there for that facility. But you've given me the opportunity, actually, to thank a lot of people. And if you bear with me, I think it's worth this opportunity with full council. I'd like to thank the councillors who came along on the 21st to the opening. I thought it was a splendid evening. I thought the speakers, our guest speakers, Margaret and Joanne, who were learned professors in their own rights in Egyptology, who said that ours is one of the best exhibits in the world internationally. So Joanne said, now she's a professor in York University of Egyptology, so finer praise you couldn't find. And also, I'd just like the opportunity to thank Wilmot Dixon, our builders who actually sponsored the evening on the 21st, and our designers from Huddersfield who didn't, well, if you've not been, I keep saying it's wow, it is wow. It's fantastic. But more than that, on Monday we had the opening of Tuesday, the African History Month. And one of the things I did say then was I'd like to thank our staff, the library staff, because we're going to use the space at the front, not the Egyptology, for things like African History Month, things like that, because it's a very usable space. And we had a splendid afternoon with the Mayor, and it was a fantastic day. So we can use that space in that sort of way. As for the cafe, like everything else these days, we're having to look at the budgets. But one of the things I want to say as well is I'd like to thank the Labour group for supporting me to the tune of £3.8 million to do this refurbishment. It wasn't just the Egyptology. There's a roof, opening up the lights now. You know it's fantastic now, the lights, natural light streaming in. And without the support of the Labour group, I don't think we could have gone ahead with this. And I just think we will look at the cafe, but it's the costings, David. It's the costings and the budgets, and we'll have to have a look at those, obviously, with everything, and what's on offer in the town centre as well. Okay.
Can I just say that I did bang into a lady from Alaska, so I don't think she was going to be catching her coach and going back home that day. Councillor Dean. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. I'm sure you've all noticed the changes in parking at Le Mans Crescent. I've noticed a number of near misses and drivers being confused. I totally agree with the horizontal parking on the west side, or the library side of the Crescent, but the issue that I have is with the parking that's outside the one-stop shop. And I think it's confusing people. If we lose those spaces, we'll only be losing 9 more spaces. But it'll be a lot easier, the traffic flow that will come through. So can I ask the question as is written on the order paper?
Councillor Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. After recent changes in parking arrangements at Le Mans Crescent, there are no proposals to change, but raised road safety will continue to be monitored. It should be fairly obvious. The strong recommendation is that when such situations, particularly the ones which are at right angles to the Le Mans Crescent area, you should reverse into those bays and not drive in. The layout has been in place since November 2017. Traffic has noticeably slowed down since the new layout and has been in place, and this is a welcome additional benefit. There are no reported incidents with the layout to raise concerns about safety. No adverse comments were received, and the permanent layout has now been confirmed in a traffic order. If, following the monitoring of road safety, it is considered that amendments are needed, these will be carried out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kurt Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, the timetable for implementing the spatial framework or the spatial strategy or whatever it ends up named when it actually arrives is continually being put back and put back. In the meantime, developers continue to file application after application to build massive housing projects on our precious greenbelt. The Independent Planning Inspectorate keeps letting these applications through after our planning committee has turned them down, and they get through the inspectorate on appeal because apparently we can't demonstrate a robust 5-year housing plan. I disagree on that one, but that's what they say. So I ask the question, does the Executive Cabinet member agree with me that we are now long past the point where we can comfortably argue that the spatial framework is coming soon when we are dealing with these planning appeals, and therefore we must create our own Bolton housing plan to cover the interim period? This will protect our green belt until the spatial framework, or whatever it ends up being called, finally arrives. Therefore I ask the question that's on the order paper.
Councillor Donachie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. It's an interesting question, this, from Councillor Kirk Robinson. I think we need to look at a bit of history with this, really. that, first of all, Bolton, like the other authorities within our conurbation, entered into a robust process of creating a spatial framework document. The government had told us that the Office of National Statistic figures were the formula figures we should use for the need for houses within our conurbation. And obviously that's what we did. We burnt the midnight oil. Phil Green used to have a full head of hair, and you see him now. You know, so we did that. We burnt the midnight oil. We worked hard. We had an informal meeting of the council in this chamber on Monday the 17th of September. We submitted our spatial framework in line with the timetable on Friday the 21st of September, and as far as we were concerned, it was in, and it would now be out to consultation with a view to implementation in early 1919, January, February. But what happened? Well, the government, when the Office of National Statistic figures came out, decided they were going to reject them, that they didn't accept them, because the figures were lower than had initially been estimated for housing need. In fact, almost by a quarter in our area. So then we were told by the government that at the Conservative Party conference, or shortly after it, we would then be told whether they would accept those original figures or whether they would put forward another formula. I'm still waiting. We're all still waiting. So let the message be clear. If the green belt in this borough is at risk, it is a direct result of the indecision of Her Majesty's government to come forward and accept a formula based on the ONC figures so that we can all move forward. And I do agree with you, Councillor Kirk Robinson, that in the meantime, our green belt is vulnerable from speculative developers. But really, the second part of your question, unfortunately, I have to inform you that the planning regime at the moment does not allow for local housing need, i.e. in Bolton, just to produce a temporary plan. We can't do that. It's just impossible. So what I would suggest to you is that you get yourself and Chris Green down to London and you have a word with Teresa, and God knows I know that woman has other things on her mind at the moment, and God help her. But that you tell her, will you let us know what the figures are, what figures the government are accepting, so that we can get on with formulating and putting together a spatial framework, not only for Bolton, but for Greater Manchester.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 9th of July, Bolton News reported that Kersley Children's Centre Services was moving to a new modern Farnworth hub, and it was quoted that Kersley Centre will no longer be council-run. Councillor Jean Gillis appears now to be suggesting, and I quote, "They, the staff and users, are happy that Kersley's Children's Centre is not closing and is just being run in a different way and will remain there for the children. Could the leader of the council please confirm whether the ruling group now decided to see sense and reverse the pulling of funding, as Councillor Gillis appears to imply?" Thank you.
It's actually going to be Councillor Cunliffe who's going to answer, not the leader of the council. Okay. Right. Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Patterson, we're not doing a U-turn. Never ever thought about doing a U-turn. Due to government cuts in December of 2016, Bolton Council approved a report to review the early years and childcare, children's centres and family support services, and to create a Start Well service, because children are important to us and families. We didn't want to lose these services. The decision was made to prioritise staffing to ensure continued delivery of services for the most vulnerable children and families, and to reduce the cost associated with the buildings. This report included a proposal that some children's centre buildings would transfer to schools, still to be used for child and family services though, in line with the purpose of the Sure Start Capital Grant.
The buildings that were transferred to schools would no longer be designated as children's centres and would then be Startwell centres. The schools providing some children and family services as part of the school's programme of activities. The schools will pick up the full premising cost for those buildings and as part of the lease agreement will continue to provide services. The report identified 8 buildings to be transferred in April 17 and a further building, which was Kersley, to be transferred at a later date. The Startwell School link sites now provide a range of services across the borough. A further report was approved in July 18, seeking approval to invite expressions of interest from schools to take over the management of Kersley Startwell Centre. The same conditions will apply, and the new provider will need to demonstrate how they will continue to deliver community-based services for vulnerable children, young people and families in line with the purpose of the Sure Start grant. One expression of interest has been received from a school, and this application is being considered against the required criteria, and a final decision will be made by me in November 18 this year. So it is clear that the plans of the council have been consistent in looking to provide quality Startwell services in all parts of the borough and to meet the needs of children and families wherever they live. And I look forward to Kersley progressing the same way. Thank you.
Councillor Flitcroft.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 17th of July 2017, the ruling Labour group announced a master plan for Bolton Town Centre. Along with this announcement was a commitment to use £100 million of borrowing by the council to fund the kickstart of the redevelopment. On the 12th of September 2018, it was announced that the ruling Labour group had appointed BDP as consultants to create Farmworth Town Centre master plan for 2019. Could the Deputy Leader please confirm the amount of public money that the ruling Labour group has committed to the latest version of the Farmworth Town Centre master plan? And as you know, or may not know, tomorrow it's Farmworth Area Forum, and we would love to give them some good news. Thank you.
Councillor Adia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. I think there might be a bit of misunderstanding here. You're absolutely right that we did follow a sequential process for Bolton, and that is we commissioned a town centre master plan, and once we actually had that and agreed it, we then worked out how much money would be needed for us to deliver that strategy and vision. At this moment in time, we're not quite there with the Falmouth Town Centre master plan. All we've done is we've commissioned it. Therefore, we don't really know how much money we should be allocated at this stage. And in a way, it'd be putting the cart before the horse if we were to commit money now before we knew what it is we were going to do in Falmouth Town Centre. So what I can suggest to you is give you some facts, and that is we've already committed £30,000 to actually developing the master plan for Falmouth Town Centre. We've committed a further £30,000 for the actual process and for the consultation that goes with that. And I can say now that we are absolutely committed as a Labour group to investing what it will take to deliver that master plan once we know what it is. What I would suggest to you, Councillor Flitcroft, is if you've got anything further to say, then you are a member of the Falmouth Steering Group that I chair, and I'd really welcome to hear from you at those meetings, I think, where some of that detail will take place. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the Council. October the 12th is a very important date on the Falmouth calendar. On this day in 1864, our once glorious People's Park, Falmouth Park, was gifted to our townspeople by the local industrialist, Liberal MP and benefactor Thomas Barnes. The headstone of Thomas lay in Falmouth Town Centre until it was removed by Bolton Council for renovation in around 2005. Since that time, residents of Falmouth have asked Bolton Council to explain what has happened to Thomas's headstone, and each of these inquiries have proved unsuccessful. Could the Executive Member for Culture and Sports give the people of Farnworth the assurance that Thomas's headstone will be found and returned to a fitting location in Farnworth Park, echoing the wishes of many Farnworthians, including those of Honorary Alderman Spencer? Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A search has been made. I'm a little bit confused. Councillor Flitcroft sits on my cabinet and you don't, but you always ask questions to my cabinet role. I just wonder if we should be switching over. And then you don't have to ask questions at council then. I just think it'd be easy for you. A search has been made to see if the council had removed the headstone, and if it had, what had happened to it. The council was unable to locate any information about the headstone. There are no records to say the headstone was removed, except in 2002, when the Bolton News reported that the council was cleaning the stone and restoring it.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Councillor Hornby, please. Thank you.
Madam members of the council, the executive member was already pre-warned about this question a couple of weeks ago, but one of the main tasks which a council must do is to project what provision it needs to provide for the future. This council has always projected and planned for the future, especially in education and the school places it needs to provide. Whilst this council does receive some provision for building schools, is it the case that other councils across the country receive higher grants than we do because they do not take the responsible plans for the future, and are we being shortchanged by this government? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Most capital funding for new school places arises out of pupil growth, and it's provided by the DFE through basic need allocations. This is calculated by the DFE following our annual submissions to them in respect to projected numbers of pupils and an assessment of the physical capacity within our schools to accommodate them. In simple terms, we have to show that our pupil numbers are going up and we need more school places to be built. Basic need is calculated and applied on a national basis using the same capital value per pupil place across all authorities. However, it is based on mainstream pupil places only, and doesn't make any allowance to meeting the extra capital cost associated with creating additional pupil places at special schools, where costs are significantly greater than places created at mainstream schools, due in part by smaller pupil class sizes and the additional specialised teaching and resource spaces required that are necessary to meet pupil needs. In recent years, Bolton has created additional pupil places to meet increased demand at Ladywood and Runworth Special School for both primary and secondary age pupils, but has not received any additional basic need capital funding to do so. Capital funding allocated to Bolton, and which has been calculated from mainstream pupil growth, has therefore had to be used to address the urgent rise in demand for places at special schools within the borough, reducing the amount of capital available to address rising demand for places in mainstream schools. So in answer really to your question, Councillor Hornby, our special needs children are shortchanged and their special needs aren't really met by the government. Myself and officers are working hard in discussions with the DFE to get additional funding, and we will continue to do so as we want the best provision for all our pupils. Thank you for the question.
Councillor Cunningham.
Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, some months ago I moved a motion through this council which was supported unanimously over the concerns of residents in the Kersley area regarding the disruption being caused by the ongoing works on the Bolton to Manchester line. I would also ask you to note that whilst the problem has somewhat reduced, it still persists. Even today, as late as today, there have been massive vehicles moving up and down the prohibited route to the NWEP compound off Church Road. I may have to come back to this council for further support when it comes to getting the damaged roads repaired prior to them vacating the site. Could the executive member please give an update to where exactly it is believed we are at this present time?
Councillor Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the Council, I have and will continue to keep elected members informed with the weekly updates from Network Rail. The Council recognises the disruption of to local residents and businesses. The leader of the Council, Councillor Mrs Thomas, and I have taken every opportunity to lobby Transport for Greater Manchester and the Greater Manchester Combined Authority about the prolonged and delayed works to the Preston-Bolton-Manchester line. I am personally all too acutely aware of problems with the line. There were problems with Farmer Tunnel project, where one of the largest pieces of drilling equipment ever used in Britain to drill the tunnel out, whereby unstable ground conditions could have had a very serious impact on the stability of the A666 St Peter's Way. We almost said St Peter's Way, disappearing into the tunnel. Noisy operations during the hours of darkness have impacted on sleeping patterns of Bolton residents living next to the line. Removal of trees, bushes and foliage were cut down without proper consultation. I apologise for these occurrences. If you pardon the expression, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Wiring is on target to be completed in October, with testing to begin shortly afterwards. The plan is for some electric services to be running before February, with all service groups which require electric traction, that's all northern service groups on the Manchester-Preston-Bolton corridor, to be running ahead of the May timetable change. The number of electric trains running will build up gradually to avoid any potential operational difficulties. The trains will run to diesel times up to the 19th of May and thereafter to electric times. In May 2019, the following service groups will use electric trains. That's the Blackpool North, Bolton, Manchester Piccadilly, Manchester Airport line, and the Preston to Bolton and Manchester Victoria. These services will provide a small increase in capacity compared to the current capacities. It is possible that some peak services will be operated by 6-car Class 323 units, and in this case, this would represent a fairly significant capacity increase compared with the current timetable. The capacities of the following service groups, that's the Clitheroe and Blackburn services through Bolton, will remain as they are currently. As will the Alderley Edge, Manchester, Piccadilly, Bolton, Wigan North Western services and the Stilly Bridge along a similar line. From December 2019 timetable, all services on these services, that's the Blackpool service and the Preston to Manchester Victoria, will operate with brand new Class 331 services with 3, 4 or 6 car formations, offering a further capacity increase. In addition, the services which operate through through Bolton to Wigan, from Alderley Edge and Staley Bridge, will be operated by Class 769s, which are ball mode units, which will offer the capacity increase in these units. These are carriages which can run on either diesel or electric. So, whilst the trains are up, the carriages are under electric overhead electric cables, they will use the pantographs. Immediately they come off there, they will swap onto diesel and they will continue on the line from Lostock through to Wigan North Western. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
There are no questions under Standing Order 9(c), so the next item of business is to deal with the minutes of the proceedings of the Planning Committee.
Councillor Kellett. Councillor Morris, sorry. Are these agreed?
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to deal with the minutes of the proceedings of the Licensing and Environmental Regulation Committee.
Councillor Murray.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the minutes of the proceedings of the minutes of the meeting of the Licensing and Environmental Regulation Committee held on the 18th of September 2018 be approved.
Councillor Howarth.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. I second the minutes of the Licensing and Environmental Regulation Committee. Thank you.
Are these agreed?
Madam Mayor, the next item of business is to deal with the minutes of the proceedings of the Council's scrutiny committees.
Councillor Walsh. Councillor Pickup.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. Move that the minutes of the following meetings of the following committees be approved. Corporate and External Issues Scrutiny Committee on the 29th of August 2018. Environmental Services Scrutiny Committee, 28th of August 2018. Children's Services Scrutiny Committee, 30th of August 2018. And the Health Overview and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee, 22nd of August 2018.
Councillor Sheikh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the Council, I second that. Thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
Your Worship, members will know that I have never been a great fan of the scrutiny process, and the minutes of corporate scrutiny before us tonight, I think, evidence why it is that I have reservations. Council met on the 15th of August. Scrutiny Committee then met on the 29th of August, so the minutes of that meeting are only presented to us tonight. Yet a meeting of the Scrutiny Committee took place last week on the 1st of October, and those minutes are not yet before us. Matters, therefore, which were raised at Scrutiny Committee cannot properly be raised through this Council, save by comment or a question. And I therefore turn to a particular item under minute 7 of that Scrutiny Committee, the Place Department Performance Report, when I raised two matters relating to the Albert Halls. One alluded to earlier by Councillor Hayes this evening of the catering contract, and the other relating to probably the most prestigious corridor in this council, which has been scaffolded for months with no end in sight. I asked at that time what progress on those two matters. A reply came not from a member, and I thought executive members by dint of their office were due to be scrutinised. The answer came from an officer, and we were promised a further report. At the meeting there from the 1st of October, not having had further reports, I again raised those same two issues. And once again, an officer responded, not a member. Now, I think that's a dereliction of duty in terms of executive members who are paid to conduct their duties as executive members and to respond to scrutiny. I think it's a disgrace that having spent 6